Hi everyone, welcome back to another episode of Everything Koshur. I'm your host Shirin, and today I'm here with Sukumar. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Namaskar, Mara. Thank you for having me. Yeah, sure. So I'm Sukumar. I am currently here in Jersey and in Jersey City. I think a lot of you are familiar with it. I'm working at Amazon right now, traveling to New York every day for ad, almost, I guess, yeah. And then, yeah, I have been here for about 5 years now in the US. Before that, I was in India from the beginning. I'm from Faridabad, that's next to Delhi, if anyone knows. But yeah, that's where my family moved after, migration.
Yeah, and the whole premise of this episode that I mainly wanted to focus on was the Kashmiri language. And the reason why I brought on Sukumar today was because there aren't a lot of youth who can speak the Kashmiri language fluently, and myself included. And I just wanted to use Sukumar as an example of someone who was able to learn the language fluently despite going through like the Indian education system where mainly like English and Hindi was spoken. So I wanted to talk about the Kashmiri language and just how important it is to our community and how it is possible to learn the language despite not growing up in Kashmir. This is Season 2, Episode 5 Language Preservation for the Upcoming Youth Generations. Just to start off, how was your parents' upbringings and what were their efforts to like keep the culture alive?
Yeah, from my parents' side, I would say Myon Molos, Havkadlapet, much Chatswalpet. But yeah, they had they both were brought up in Kashmir, and they were both doctors. Did the whole education there, worked there. But then, yes, after everything that happened, they had to move to Faridabad. But I think because they grew up in that whole environment of everyone speaking Kashmiri, not just in their homes, but also outside, also in school, everywhere, right? So I think they kind of had that ingrained, like that's the language that they would, I believe, think in and even speak. So it was fairly fluent. It's the how you start off with, and then even after the migration, I think that's one thing that they held on to was speaking that way, and keeping sort of the traditions, um, the parts of these parts of culture alive, even if it's within the household, because most people outside they're from the region where you are. It's not going to be Kashmiri, even though you can connect with the Kashmiris in the neighborhood or that who live nearby, or if you have family very close. But at the end of the day, it's going to be very close knit. It's not going to be in a whole environment again. But yeah, I think their efforts to hold on to the culture, hold on to the language, that really paid off for me and my brother specifically. And just like the fact that we could also grasp from there. I guess that would be like the foundation or the setting stone for our learning of that language.
Yeah, I agree. Like my dad was also brought up in Kashmir and he also held on to that language and so did my mom. That was one thing that they wanted. And just for me personally, like when I was a child, like my mom and dad would speak Hindi and Kashmiri. They would just teach me both languages. But then like as I got older and I started going to school, then the Kashmiri slowly got lost. And that was like one of the regrets I had. And so, yeah, I do think parents play like a very big role because they are the last generation to have been born in Kashmir, most of them. And not to say that it's the parents' fault, although sometimes I do blame my mom that why didn't she teach me Kashmiri more? Um, but I think just as you get older, it's important to be more, you become more independent. And if you really do feel like you want to contribute to the community, one of the great ways to do that is to just learn basic Kashmiri. And yeah, I think learning from parents and grandparents is another great way as well.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I agree with that part. Like, with the whole, like, even for me in India, like the schooling was in English and Hindi was like one of the languages that I studied, and so it would be like it as a part of curriculum, right? So parents would have to like sort of make sure that we could speak that at least from an academic perspective to be good at academics. Um,
Yeah.
and so that would be there, and this whole need for Kashmiri would be purely from a cultural perspective, and from like it is our mother tongue. It is very important to us, and that's where the need would stem from, and not from a curriculum point of view. Like I wouldn't have to go outside and talk to 50 people in Kashmiri, but then again, I should know it.
Right. Yeah, I think a lot of people, especially like in schools, like they take Spanish and French, because it's mainly just on the languages that most people speak nowadays, rather than, the language that you like your mother tongue, like you said. So that's one thing that I think maybe that's another reason why people don't necessarily make an attempt to learn the language because they know it's not spoken as much, compared to languages in school. But I know for me personally, whenever I'm at KOA events or I'm at a family friend's house, and I see like all the adults talking in Kashmiri and singing Kashmiri songs and bhajans, I know like a part of me just like wishes that I also um, spoke the language because I feel like I could have connected to them on a way deeper level, if I had like without that language barrier. And so it's a beautiful language too. So a part of me wishes I could genuinely like understand what they are saying. But yeah, do you feel like you were able to connect with like your parents or your grandparents on a deeper level? And like, what other like benefits do you feel like you have from being able to speak the language fluently?
Yeah, yeah, of course. I feel like that's absolutely the case with like uh, especially with grandparents when you're talking to that generation, and they have this stronghold on the language, and it's like they just understand you like that when you speak in Kashmiri. And so for me, I was super lucky enough to be able to be young and have my grandparents there, and they at that time I was barely able to speak Kashmiri, properly. I could understand it though, just because it was continuously running in the household. But to speak it was another, mountain to cross. But yeah, I think even if you're not able to speak very well, let's say, like when I was young, it's still like you can get the point across initially, and then you sort of build over it, and then you sort of it takes time, and it takes time, and then eventually you feel like, oh, you're starting to get like a bit of fluency in it, and that's when I think that's when you really want to talk a lot more and a lot more, just because they also start talking to you in a way that, hey, yeah, yeah, you're speaking it in a very good way. That's awesome.
No, yeah, and I know, like, for me personally, when I go to India and visit my relatives, I kind of get nervous because I know that they're going to judge me if they hear me talking in English or even like an American accent. So I mainly speak Hindi, but I just try my best to at least try to understand Kashmiri, just because I know that that's something that they're just so used to and they grew up with, and so it's kind of expected of you to learn the language or at least make an attempt to. Not that people should be scared into learning the language or feel like there's some sort of pressure, but I think it definitely helps. And it's a great way to be more involved without having to worry about not knowing how the language itself. Um,
Yeah, yeah, that definitely helps as well. Like, having people around, it gives you like that enthusiasm to sort of participate, because the ongoing discussion is happening all in Kashmiri, and it's just, you know, to be able to put, like, say in Kashmiri, I guess it gives a bit of maturity touch, sort of, it's for us it's like part of it, right? Because I'm sure like back when our parents generation or the generation above them, they were young, I'm sure like they were way better at Kashmiri than we are when we are young. But and even though we have hope to like learn Kashmiri to be good at it in the future, but to us it's like part of maturing. It's like, yeah, now we can speak the way our parents used to speak Kashmiri. So and events, I think like that they're the biggest contributors in a way, because you
right.
have the gathering of so many people and all of them speaking the language. It's just perfect. It's like where else are you gonna hear everybody saying kalva chai cha, kalva chai cha.
Oh yeah, like events are 100% my favorite part as well. But yeah, I definitely do think that events and KOA's events, they are it's such a fun environment to be in,
Yep.
and just knowing that the culture and the community is just so strong and alive. And it's not necessarily a numbers thing. Just being at a family friend's house or at some gathering and just seeing the instruments being played and everything. I think that's like one of my favorite parts of being Kashmiri, I would say.
Yeah, yeah. Even on I don't know if you've been on a in a Moinsarat, but the vibe of so many Kashmiri music back to back. It's pretty insane. Like because I mean even in India, I used to listen to a lot of English music, but then when when you're at this event, you're like, oh, this is so like a whole. It feels like a different world because this is like you get a part of what your parents would have experienced throughout their lives, and you're like, wow, yeah, I wish I had that part as well.
Yeah. No, yeah, I definitely agree. I think, like you were saying, how you listened to English music when you were growing up. I think at least one thing that I've seen in like people my age is that like they definitely do enjoy like Bollywood and Kashmiri music, which is just I don't know, it just comes naturally. Like I know I have my Bollywood playlist in my Spotify account, and
Yeah,
I like everyone knows like Kukus Bukus and all these like very iconic Kashmiri songs.
yep,
So
and
yeah,
Bomro, Bomro.
right. It's like it's one. I think songs are definitely one way that again the community is brought together because Kashmiris love their songs and their music. Um, that's another way to just get a little more familiar with the language is just listening to these songs while growing up.
I think one really cool thing that you mentioned earlier was about you know how the young might zone out, especially if they're like not able to grasp it, like the very basic understanding, right? And I, I think I understand that a lot. Like I did my bachelor's in like engineering from Chandigarh, um, and over there, like there's a lot of Punjabi language that goes around. Obviously, it's there, and and so, as someone coming from, a region where there was barely any Punjabi spoken, I had no background in it. And when people would speak Punjabi in front of me, like, okay, for the first few times, you kind of ask, like, hey, what does that mean? What does that mean? But then it's like you want to zone out at that point, like, at some point.
Yeah,
And I think, like, yeah, that can happen. But I feel like, if you want to just, like, take, it's like taking a few hurdles, um, going into that uncomfortable territory of trying it out. It might, you might not sound very great, but if you could like sort of be comfortable with making mistakes, I think that's like the stepping stone of you just grasping onto this beautiful language.
right. I know you did your um, undergrad and your high school in India, and then you
Yes.
came to the US for your master's. So, do you feel like when you came over to America that your sense of like the Kashmiri community and having those people, do you feel like it got stronger when you came to the US? Or would you say that it was better back at home in India?
Oh, that's actually pretty interesting. I think um, the, there's a part of self participation, and then there's parents taking you to events. So I think in India, you always had the parents that are like, hey, we have to go to this event. Oh, आज नवरेह event Parvataspet. So you go to those events and you automatically are in a crowd of your community, and it's amazing. But over here, I think it's more of like you have to you sort of feel that, oh, I need to. now step up. I think that was one for me because even my parents were like, yeah, 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 look for like communities online. Once I first came here, early days, they were like, yeah, look for people over there, look for community over there. And I was like, yeah, yeah, once I get through the curriculum of my master's, but yeah, I think over here, these I think I've seen a few organizations, and it's a very good effort, honestly, because especially with like youth organizations, because otherwise, it, it's hard to attract the young like right away. This sort of gets a good ground for them to be comfortable with people, in their generation. I feel that's pretty cool.
Right. And yeah, I think my parents definitely did like the hard work in terms of finding the connections. Because when they came to this country, only then did they start like finding other Kashmiris, and then KOA was another reason why they're still very active in the community today. So they definitely did the hard work in terms of finding the connections. But I definitely agree, like having friends your age and having people that like are very active in these events and showed it up to these events. I think that is um, just like a motivator in terms of just being more involved. And like you said, it really is like, especially in this country, it really is like you're on your own. If you want to learn the language and if you want to make an attempt, then you have to do that. Like as you get older, you have to be the one to like step in and take charge and just find a way to be more involved because your parents can only do so much. Um, but I
Yeah,
think that if
yeah.
you, yeah, like if you really feel like, um, one good thing about these organizations is that if you feel like you want to be involved one day, that you have these organizations to rely on, and that they're there and they are always open to having new members.
Yeah, that is a pretty I guess I'd put it as a pretty good part of maturing. It's like now I have to sort of go out there and try to uh, you know be be like be a good participant in the culture and the language. But I think part of it also comes because once even if you're born in US, it doesn't mean you're working at the same place. You could be off working in a whole different state, one coast to the other. um, and so I think you begin to sort of miss being able to use the language so often because yeah, they're you can call home and everything, but then you want people to interact with, and nobody's, let's say, speaking that. Even that part also makes you want to go and um, you know find however people have met over here, whether it's through organizations, just communities, just a gathering, just a random event, whatever it is, you want to be part of that in that sense.
Yeah, I agree. And just a little shout out for KOA Youth. I know that we have a language team. On the KOA Youth's YouTube channel, we have like shortcut videos, which are just I think 15-minute videos that just say the basics of like basic Kashmiri words. I think they have like foods and shapes, colors, and that's always a good start to be watching those videos. And then I also know that KOA has these Alak Kashmiri classes that you can sign up for. And they have their spring and their fall classes, and they will give homework, and they're just proper classes that will teach you Kashmiri. So I think there definitely are opportunities out there because I know even for me personally, I want to hopefully one day be fluent in the language. That's just a personal goal for myself. Um, and so there definitely are ways to do that. And yeah, I think it very is. I mean, your parents also, like, I know your parents, like, as you were growing up and as you were brought up, your parents spoke the language and they had you speak it as well. But I think the biggest takeaway is just that for people who aren't necessarily familiar with the language, there's still time to learn. Like, it's never too late.
Yeah,
Um,
I think the language part, I, I really like that part because no, even if you can speak Kashmiri fluently, even if you you have a certain hold on the language, there are always instances where you might just forget the word because for I is possible that you might be sort of converting Kashmiri in your mind. You're thinking in Hindi, you're thinking in English, you're just converting it to Kashmiri in your mind. And so you might have a sentence in your mind, but you forget the word, and you just need somewhere to look it up. And so having like a sort of a catalog of the language, it's super helpful, and not too easily accessible. Definitely helpful.
Right. That's one good thing is that we have the internet and we have the resources. So,
Yes.
um, yeah, if you really want to put your heart to it and really learn the language, there are so many ways that you can get started on that, which I think is a really positive thing. Um, and yeah, just while we're still on the topic, like, what's your favorite Kashmiri phrase, or what phrase do you see yourself using the most?
Oh, this is the thing where you're listening, like some conversation is happening at let's say home or some um counter or something, and then this phrase comes up, and then like a lot of people jump into it, like I that's when I think the phrases hit me. But like off the top of my head, I guess Vasakaping Gasanav, Dakadidi Pakanav.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, in which context would this phrase be used?
Oh, this is I think this is for like when people get too lazy and need to be pushed to do some work. So the context might be super funny, but yeah, it's pretty interesting.
That's definitely a phrase that my parents would use for me. Um, yeah, that's one way that I knew if I was ever in trouble, my parents would not necessarily curse in Kashmiri, but they would speak to me in Kashmiri, and I wouldn't necessarily know what they're saying, but I know it's not good because that's when they're mad at me. So
Yeah.
I guess that's one way to also get brought up into the language. Um, but like I think threat is the big maybe that's my favorite word just because sometimes I would be usually in arguments.
Yeah. I mean, hey, I remember what one event that happened. It was Navare and at Hari Parvat in near Delhi itself. Yeah, so you mentioned that word. You'd think that Kashmiris would hold back on that word, but funnily enough, Anupam Kher, he once came to this Navare event, and I think that's the first time, and it might be the only time I saw him at Hari Parvat once, and he also used that word. It was
Oh
all
wow.
laughs and all. It was once he started speaking Kashmiri, I was like, oh, wow, that's yeah. We have this great representation right there.
Oh yeah, definitely. Um I remember seeing a review for the Everything Kosher podcast actually. It wasn't necessarily a negative review, but it was just a review saying that the title is called Everything Kosher. Yet the people aren't speaking Kashmiri. Yeah, I don't know Kashmiri fluently, but even though yes, maybe the title of the podcast is a little misleading with Everything Kosher. We'd say Everything Kosher in the sense of like kosher topics, but not necessarily in the Kashmiri language. But if people would like that, and if they would like episode in Kashmiri only, I think that would be pretty cool as well. Um,
Nasa, so
but
misleading. I skaro question point kat parvaicha. So such a comment as tika, such a pose one. Everything kosher chu
yeah,
pais karun kosher poi ठीक kat not kya.
yeah, it was our first hate comment, I guess. But
No, I think I
but
think
yeah,
that's a motivation right there.
no, yeah, I'm definitely trying to work on it. It's definitely something that I want to learn. It's one of my life goals. But yeah, what piece of advice would you give to youth who can't speak Kashmiri, but want to stay involved in the community?
Oh, that's a difficult one. I would say like definitely know that you are part of a community. Like I get how difficult it can get not having many people to talk Kashmiri to, or it can get in a way isolating. But I would suggest like sort of try to be more comfortable with making mistakes, and and don't be afraid to ask. Like I think that's the biggest thing, because I mean, for majority of my part, I think I've asked so much. Like, even when you get like, let's say, 2%, 5% of the language, like still like I have to ask, like, oh, I have to, even I think yesterday I've had to ask, oh, what do you say 92 in Kashmiri? And I'm like, it's Dunamatwanan kinikawan. So that's kind of the thing. Like, I, like you even no matter how experienced you are, you can make mistakes. And I think asking, like, and it could be anyone, whether it's family, friends, someone from an organization, anyone. I think, I don't think anyone would be uh, opposed to helping, uh, so yeah, and be comfortable with, even if it's not fluent, in your accents and everything. I know it can feel like it's not, you know, it's not the way you've heard it, but you can't, jump on to the goalpost right away. You have to run to it, obviously. So yeah.
Right. No, yeah, I agree. And I know just the way that I was brought up, my parents always told me that, you are part of such a beautiful culture that's been existing for thousands and thousands of years. They always told me to just do your part and to stay involved, and to learn the language. And so that's just the way I was brought up. And I would definitely say that, just to answer this question, like you said, like it's okay to make mistakes, but just the curiosity and just learning. I think like knowledge is key. It's the answer to most things. Um, so just knowing that if you're Kashmiri, just knowing what you're a part of and what your culture signifies, and I think that is like a really good gift.
Yep, yep. And then again, that there are so many traditions that we have go throughout the year, and obviously those traditions involve gathering, and there's no better place to go and try speaking a little bit Kashmiri there, whether it's people meeting for, I don't know, तो अगर हेरा तो छु या um या panuk to छु या कोई, there's a lot of days we have. I mean, na vre
Yeah.
छु zaruri luchi to nadar munchkin, so that क्या को करें.
Yeah.
But yeah, yeah, and once you get the, you try it out. That's it. Yeah, go for it.
Yeah. Ashtami is coming up, so if
Yes,
anyone is doing a Ashtami puja and they know they're going to be at a gathering, that's a great way to start. Just hearing people, or, asking your parents or uncles or aunties, oh, how do I say this in Kashmiri? Or just teach me a little bit. That's maybe one way people can get involved.
absolutely. And I petition we officially rename Puja for this channel to Puza.
Yes.
No, I'm
Yes,
just
I
kidding.
agree.
Yeah, yeah.
um, but yeah, those were all the questions I had, and I think we covered a lot. Um, and yeah, thank you so much to all the listeners for listening. If you want to find out more information, Everything Kosher is on Apple Podcasts and on Spotify, and the KOA Youth organization that we're a part of is on Instagram, Spotify, Twitter, and a bunch of other platforms just at KOA Youth. KOA Youth is also a great, great way to learn more about the Kashmiri community if you aren't already following us. Um, and yeah, do you have any final words?
Nasa, when kya sore or discuss? No, no, I think yeah, it is great to talk about this. I think the more we talk, the more we sort of, even, I mean, and not just for, I think, I hope this is this was a good experience for the people listening, but even for me myself, like, it's great to talk about this. And it's always, I hope other people who are listening, they also someday could come up and talk about this. This is awesome.
Yeah, definitely. I definitely enjoyed this talk, and we definitely have a lot more episodes coming up in the future on a bunch of other topics. And maybe next time we can also do a part two to this series where we can bring in, an expert or maybe some Kashmiri literature um, expert who is fluent in the language and maybe knows history or some background to the language. Maybe we can have that as a part two.
Yeah, I'd
Um,
be looking forward to that 100%. Count me in.
Yeah, I agree. I was surprised we hadn't done a language episode yet, so I knew that's something I wanted to talk about since it's just so important to our culture.
Yes, yes.
We can definitely do more episodes as well. I think you were just a good setting stone for that there is hope, even if you aren't raised in Kashmir, it's no excuse.
Absolutely. The
So yeah,
motivation in that form is in
yes,
when
exactly.
you kosher man se kat karein. Bozan you.
Yes, exactly. There's no excuse that I don't want to do it because Sukumar has done it. And
Yeah,
he
yeah,
is an example for all of us. But yeah, that's all we have for this episode.
yeah.
Thanks again for watching so much, and see you in the next one.
Thank you. Thank you for having me
Bye.
again. Bye.
Bye bye.